Senator Aubrey McCarthy.
Thank you, Ciara. Thank you for being here. Listening to what you're saying and looking at the different statements, one thing I've addressed recently is about the wasted energy. And hearing that there's 550,000 households in fuel poverty, at the same time millions of euro worth of energy is being wasted. I think it's something like 1.4 million a day. So it seems, how can a system that seems to waste clean energy when people go cold then be considered to work very well for consumers? I'm chair of an organisation called Tiglin, so we work with an organisation to try and heat water tanks for those that are in either social housing or in supported housing, and it seems to work very well. So just from a CCPC point of view, given your statutory role to protect consumers, do you see the failure to use surplus energy as a form of, as a big issue? And what role should the CCPC play in addressing the big wastage?
So can I just clarify when, Senator, when you reference wasted energy, it's where...
energy that can't be stored, that's produced.
Yeah. So there's too much wind on the system that can't be used. Yeah. So it is absolutely a problem in terms of, as we would look at it as market experts, that the market isn't functioning very well, or there needs to be consideration of how the market functions in order to allow that product, which has value, to be used. So obviously it is an area that we know, and we work quite closely with CRU, who are the regulator in that area. CRU make the decisions in relation to how the wholesale market operates. But something we always engage with them on is how competition might work and how you might incentivise the market. So one of the big issues, and we may all be aware of it, is around how do you incentivise batteries to be on the network so that actual energy...
So the issue seems to be storage. So the energy, there's no problem producing it, but it's storing that energy, which shouldn't, in the middle of a cost of living crisis and what we're seeing this last week, surely we should be examining how best to store. So that should be the priority.
Absolutely, and I know it is something that is regularly reviewed by the CRU. So the question isn't just one of storage, because anyone can buy a battery and store the energy. It's what their incentive is to do so, because those batteries on the network will provide huge value. So what incentive regime should be in place to facilitate people to buy those batteries? The other key element is at the other end. As in
grant aid?
So more of the what is, because they provide a value to the grid, which batteries do, whether there should be money available for people through various mechanisms. And it's quite a detailed structure how the wholesale electricity market works. But it is an area of discussion where you can be incentivised to have a battery and not just kind of have to pay for it all yourself. And that does happen.
But isn't it frightening, Brian, that as what we've seen in the last week, we saw a resignation yesterday, all this is over fuel and the price going up and that, and at the same time we're throwing away hundreds of millions of wasted energy. So I'm thinking, maybe I'm a bit naive here, but if we can sort of plug that gap, if we can fix that, will we go a long way to fix fuel poverty?
No, absolutely, and it is a focus of the broader industry. The other side of it, which I think is very important to mention, is demand. So often what actually happens is at night when people aren't using electricity, that's when there's a lot of wind and therefore it can't be used, and you have wasted energy. How do you switch demand?
But if you store it, you don't have to switch demand.
True. But you can store it, and also if you have more demand when the wind is blowing, then you don't lose that energy. So the whole idea of tariffs and having cheaper tariffs when the wind is blowing, so people switch on their machines, both domestically and industrially, so you can use that energy. And again, back to the market, is there enough incentive for the people and the businesses to use the demand?
But is there enough of incentive from the government to actually go, OK, there's an issue here, let's address it? Because it's like filling up a car full of petrol, and then if it's not used by midnight, it's all dumped. And I just think that just doesn't make sense in the current state of play. So I'm wondering, would the CCPC actually advocate for a change in policy in order to address this and actively do that, so that then you're dealing with a current situation?
So, I mean, generally we engage with the CRU on the electricity market. We're currently working with them. We've been asked by the Minister to do a review of retail electricity and gas. So we're working with CRU to make sure we coordinate what everyone does. But that problem, which is an international issue because the same thing happens anywhere.
And what's best practice internationally in that situation when too much energy is being produced? What's best practice there?
So the two elements, one is batteries, so you can store it. Or store it in some other form, but batteries is becoming increasingly economic to do so. And having an incentive regime that people will buy the batteries and store the electricity. And the second is moving demand to when the wind or the sun, in many countries, it's a big issue in midday. Moving demand to when the renewables are actually
but it's hard to change consumer behaviour, the moving demand bit. I can see how you're up against something difficult there. But if you can store it, it doesn't matter about the demand. Anyway, I've laboured that point, but you get my point. I think there's something we're missing here, and there's something huge that we could work on and make a difference, especially for the people. I run the Lighthouse Homeless Cafe on Pier Street. I've just literally come from there, and you're dealing with people who are absolutely feeling the pinch. People that are coming in they have an apartment, but they can't heat it, and they're coming in for their lunch. So that type of thing needs to be addressed, and yet we're throwing the fuel away. Just on another question, the 30-kilometre delivery radius for home heating oil, does that create a difficulty regarding pockets of competition locally? So the way the 30-kilometre rule works?
I'll ask Jeffrey to comment on that, but just to note, it's not a rule, it's kind of what we see in the markets. It's a natural guideline. How the home heating oil companies work, they generally go around 30 kilometres.
Yeah, so exactly as Brian said, when we're looking at a merger and we're trying to assess whether that merger might limit competition, we need to sort of look at a particular market where the competition takes place. And for home heating oil, we have a specific radius. And the reason we've come up with that radius is because that actually tends to be where the companies will deliver to. So if it's beyond 30 kilometres, it becomes less worth it for the company because of transportation costs and other issues. There are always customers at the margins that might be able to get a supplier to come closer to them. But it just allows us to ensure that at the local level, that if there's a merger between competitors at a local level, that we're not missing a potentially anti-competitive effect if we were to draw that circle too large.
Okay, thank you, Ciara. Thank you.